Bullshit.
Pretend for a moment we've entered a parallel universe, free of bullshit and full of bold solutions. That's what the No BS show is all about. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Our guest today is Steve Tanzilli, but first, let's cut the bullshit. When I ask people if they've listened to the podcast, I often get a quizzical look, sort of like, WTF is a podcast. I tell them, forget about my show. Have you listened to any podcasts? Again, the nervous look. Some admit they've never listened. Others are honest enough to say they don't even know how. I'm here to help. A loyal listener might say, Dave, you're preaching to the choir. We're listening to this podcast. True, but there's a lot of people who see or hear about the show through Suzanne's great social media efforts, and they click on a tweeted link or something from LinkedIn, and they're just getting a snippet, and they still really don't know much about podcasts and how to actually access podcasts or why they're so significant. I'm hoping they hear this part and begin to enjoy this amazing medium. So if we were texting, you could say right now, WTF is a podcast. Well, it's radio on demand, wherever and whenever you want it. Podcasts entertain, podcasts educate, podcasts inform, podcasts inspire, and podcasts connect. When you start listening to a podcast that you enjoy, you become a part of that community, and there are connections between the host and the listeners. And yes, a lot of people get it. Suzanne, Steve, more than 1 billion podcasts were listened to in 2015. 1 billion. 75 million unique users and growing each day. The stat from 3 months ago, 21% of the United States population, that's 1 in 5, listen to podcasts regularly. What's driving the growth? You can pick something you want to listen to and then listen while working out, while driving, while cooking, while walking, eating, whatever. Most car manufacturers worldwide now incorporate Apple's CarPlay or a competing version, making it so easy to listen while driving. The choices of podcasts are seemingly endless. You can pick sports, music, writing, social media, no BS marketing, pop culture, tips on driving, building, manufacturing, cars, anything you want, any subject, and you can listen to it anytime, anywhere. I know a lot of people still aren't sure of how to find a podcast they'd like and how to listen. So here's a couple of ways. First, you don't have to use an app. You can find most podcasts online. They most have their own website. For example, the No BS Marketing Show is at boldsolutionsnobs.com. So if you're at your office, you go to boldsolutionsnobs.com, you can get any one of the podcasts. You can listen to Jerry Zahorchak, former Secretary of Education, from podcast show number 2. You can listen to Steve's or his friend Greg Joseph of the Clarks. You can listen to Denise Sensosti-Troby talking sex from Pure Romance. That's just by going to boldsolutionsnobs.com. The same for any major website, whether it's John Lee Dumas, who's a fantastic Entrepreneur on Fire podcast. Anybody you want, you can find them at their websites. You don't have to be nervous about where do I go. But another way is to use the podcasting app, and the most popular one is from iTunes. So if you've got an iPhone, it's right there. It's that little purple. It says podcast. It's a little purple microphone-looking thing. It says podcast. That just go there, enter Mastovich, and you found my show. I happen to use Overcast, which can be downloaded via any app store, whether it's Android or iTunes. Overcast has some cool features like Smart Speed, which eliminates dead air and the ums and ahs and tightens it up. It saves you minutes on every podcast. Another feature allows you to hit a button that takes you back 30 seconds or then forward 30 seconds. So if you miss something and want to hear it again, you're working out, you're in the midst of lifting, Suzanne's pumping the iron, and she goes, wait a minute, what'd Dave say? She hits a little button, goes back 30 seconds, she listens, hits it, pops it back forward 30 more, whatever. Overcast works great for me, but the standard iTunes podcasting app works well too. Plus, there are a number of others like Stitcher, and there's one called Pocket Cast, but there's hundreds of them. The major takeaway, it's all about no BS, is that podcasts can be a great resource for all of you. If you're only listening to this because you're my friend and said, Crazy Dave asked me to listen, no, go beyond that, because podcasts educate, they entertain, they inform, they inspire, they connect. Take the time to get started. It'll be worth your while. Our guest today is Steve Tanzilli, the founder of the SAEM, Sports Arts Entertainment Management Program at Point Park University. In addition to his directing and teaching duties, he runs his own sports talent agency called Sports Legends Group. It's a full-service marketing, finance, and law firm for professional athletes and celebrities. Steve's worked with players from the Pittsburgh Steelers like Fast Willie Parker, as well as other high-profile clients. I just wanted to say Fast Willie Parker. His background also includes 12 years of experience with 141 Worldwide Sports and Entertainment, where he worked in close contact with high-end clients on a daily basis, from Coca-Cola, ESPN, Kraft Foods, and so many more. He's also worked with the Pirates, and didn't know this until today, the Johnstown Steel Baseball Club. Folks, 6 degrees of Suzanne, but there's also 6 degrees of Johnstown. No matter who you meet on this earth will somehow have 6 degrees tied back to either Suzanne Mayer or Johnstown. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Steve, this is so timely because you had me speak to one of your classes today.
I did.
And I just find what Point Park is doing so incredible. Let me start with a couple things. I've had my office in the downtown since we opened, but prior to that, I was in the downtown with UPMC and Duquesne University. You couldn't pull me out of it. The transformation of the city of Pittsburgh in the last 10 years, phenomenal. Specifically, Point Park, driving by, it's now a true campus. So let's start with that, talk about the transformation of the campus, and then we'll move into how you built what's really just a really cool program. So talk about how much of an impact Point Park has made and how it now you can tell it's a university as opposed to 10 years ago. You didn't even know it was there.
Yeah, I started at Point Park about a dozen years ago, and when I started, we literally had 2 buildings. 2 buildings that you would, nondescript, you wouldn't even know. And now I think we're up to about 15 buildings. I believe we're the largest landowner or tenant, however you want to phrase it, in Pittsburgh. And what's great about Point Park for me is how innovative the university is. And I really do think that we are transforming the downtown market. And when I walked in here, I noticed Mayor Murphy's picture on the wall. And I remember years ago that the Murphy administration was talking very firmly about trying to, if you remember, bring in a shopping mall. And let's have a mall in town, and that will drive folks to downtown. And I remember thinking, to me, that was, it was always about the students. And the more students that we could get to be downtown, and we now have 1,100 students that live in downtown because of Point Park. And I really do think that when we walk through Market Square and you see how alive and how much energy Pittsburgh has, I think a lot of it stems from the young people that are living downtown. And I think a lot of those young people, I take credit for that they're Point Park students. I
agree. Just driving the Boulevard of the Allies, walking towards Market Square, you now see, and I even give it the example to, like, I teach at IUP, and you're saying that I'm probably going to be teaching at Point Park at some point here. That'd be great. But IUP about 10 years ago did this. They took the 4 ways that you can enter the university because it's part of Indiana PA so much, and they made clearly the stone structures so when you drive, you know you're entering. Well, I get the feel now the same thing with Point Park. When I drive by, I feel like to my right, coming into work every day, I feel like that's Point Park from there to there. It's a whole block. Then today when we were walking, I thought that's Point Park to my left. And I think that you've done that, and it's just beautiful. And I just think we got to get people to see that.
Yeah, I think they have to experience it. And as the university continues to grow and continues to be innovative, and one of my big charges here in our School of Business is to really work hard to connect the downtown marketplace with our students and connect our students to Pittsburgh. And we talk about campus, and what I always tell prospective students and parents, what makes Point Park so unique is that their son or daughter can literally roll out of bed and hit Heinz Field, hit Stage AE, hit the Benham Center, hit BNY Mellon, hit PNC Bank. And you don't have that in most other institutions. And so what I'm trying to do in the School of Business is really capitalize on that so students really get an appreciation of the incredible opportunity that they have before them.
It's pretty impressive. So we're going to talk about the traditional format of the show is to go back to your beginning. So we'll do that, but I want to make sure we also spend a great deal of time as you get to the tail end of your background talking about how you built this cool thing, and
Sure.
and that I've had the chance to talk to a class, and just I'm really fired up about it now. So let's go back and talk about your career path, your journey. To start with your education.
Yeah, I grew up in Boston. And
Are you a Patriots fan?
I am a crazy Patriot and Red Sox fan.
Okay, cut the show.
The
Cut
show's
the
over.
Show's over.
It's over. It is a true dynasty. So I.
Oh, man. Oh, he slipped that in after I was letting him go.
I did. So I came to Pittsburgh because in high school, my goal in life was to be general counsel for a baseball team. And so I only applied to schools that had Major League Baseball teams in them. And I was a runner. So I ran cross country and track in high school. And Duquesne offered me a scholarship to come run. And more importantly, they offered me an opportunity to secure an internship with the Pirates. And so I went to Duquesne. And the first time I'd ever been in Pittsburgh was the first day of practice. And I enrolled at Duquesne, and I was fortunate enough to secure an internship with the Pirates. And I worked in PR for 2 years while I was getting a business degree at Duquesne. I then left the Pirates to go work in minor league baseball for the Johnstown Steel.
Woo!
And the reason why I did that, and we spoke about it actually in my class earlier today, was, I had the opportunity to stay with the Pirates, but I saw the opportunity in Johnstown as a way to really advance my career. Because in minor league baseball, and that wasn't even minor league baseball, it was independent, the ability to do everything and took less money to move to Johnstown, and literally slept on the floor in my general manager's apartment because of the opportunity, because of what I was going to be able to do. And I was working at Johnstown for a year, and I was offered the opportunity to stay on and become the general manager of the club. But Johnstown and wasn't necessarily where I thought I would be. So I went to law school. I went to Pitt Law. And while I was at Pitt Law, I wound up working my summers at a sports marketing agency and was there for about a dozen years.
Which agency?
It was, at the end of the day, it was the numbers 141 worldwide, which was the street address of the headquarters in London. But we were bought and sold a number of times during my tenure there. And so our clients, as you read, were corporate America, Kraft, Jim Beam, Coke. And it was my job to determine.
You combined those two.
I did, right. In Johnstown, too.
Believe me, I grew up there.
Yeah. So it was my job to determine what athlete or celebrity or what property or event they should put on a box of crackers, or who should they feature on a can of Coke. We talked about Kobe Bryant's great night last night. So should we be featuring Kobe, or should we be featuring Steph Curry or LeBron? So, I would do the research and come back with suggestions and then execute, the deal. So I was doing that for a number of years, and we wound up moving our offices to PNC Park when they opened. We were on the second floor, had a very sexy street address, 115 Federal Street. And I had a lot of students come before me looking for an internship. And they were from various schools. It doesn't matter. Pitt, Robert Morris, Slippery Rock, IUP. And I would always ask the students, why do you want to do this? And they would look at me and say, oh, because I love the Pirates, or I love watching basketball, or I love going to concerts. And it frustrated me, because that's not why you want to get into sports, arts, and entertainment. The reason why you want to get into our industry is because you want to make money, and B, you want to leverage the emotional attachment we have to our athletes, our celebrities, our properties, to sell more goods and services. And so I was frustrated because I could not seem to find a group of interns that grasped that what we did was a business. It was bottom line driven. So by happenstance, I wound up being introduced to the president of Point Park University, Dr. Catherine Henderson. And she had asked myself, along with a couple other folks, if we had any bright ideas to improve the School of Business offerings. And out of pure selfish reasons, I said, yeah. There should be a program housed in the School of Business that teaches what we do in sports marketing, entertainment marketing is a business. And she said, okay, go do it. And so back to the campus, I had attended Duquesne, I attended Pitt, and I, honest to gosh, did not know where Point Park was. I thought it was at the Point. And I thought it was at the Point, and it was just a dance school. And so
Suzanne's nodding.
Yeah. And so when I got there, I was so struck by the lack of red tape and the ability to if you have a good idea, let's go with it. And as we've continued to grow as a university, enrollment has increased, and the number in our footprint has increased, and we have a new, Dr. Hennigan, that has always been a steadfast way of life at Point Park, is that if you have a good idea, let's go for it. Mm-hmm. And so the good idea 12 years ago was the Sports Arts and Entertainment program, and it's grown to a point now where we have 300 students who want to do everything from managing bands to managing venues to working in nonprofit to working for professional sports teams to managing sports athletes. And so it's been a great success. And the key to what I've been able to build at Point Park is I've built it with great faculty members. We speak about Greg Joseph and Ed Traviseri and others.
We're going to get Ed on this show, too.
We have to. Ed would be great. Well, the stories he'll tell will be amazing.
Bill Deasy, we've got to get him.
Yep. And whatever stories he doesn't tell or doesn't finish, I can finish for him because I've heard them a few times.
We'll bring some Jim Beam and Coke.
Yes, that's right. So anyway, I built the program on the fundamentals that we need industry professionals to teach the classes. An internship is a requirement of graduation. You don't get a job in our business just by having a great GPA. It's all about who you know. I've always been less concerned about the book and more concerned about practical roll-up-your-sleeves experience. And that's why I had you come speak to my class today. And we didn't talk about a textbook. I didn't say, hey, let's talk about chapter 10. It was about, let's talk about the next chapter in your life and what do you need to do to succeed. And so that's what we've done. And now I'm taking the model of the SAM program and trying to do that and spread it across our School of Business. And it just really comes down to embracing our location in downtown Pittsburgh and getting our students to understand the opportunities that are at their fingertips and having them appreciate the employment opportunities and where they can go and be successful.
When a student enrolls, talk about what that student looks like, what their background was to get to that point, and then talk about their experience the first couple years.
Yeah, I always say that Point Park students to me are gritty. They're gritty, they're hardworking. Many of them are first generation college students. An overwhelming majority of our students are working. They're going to school. They have internships. They're volunteering. They're really committed to getting the education because they really appreciate where it's going to lead them. I view students as, and I haven't come up with a better term, as customers. And that doesn't mean coddling them. It doesn't mean holding their hand. But I really do hold myself and my team accountable to students. And the open door 24/7 policy is one I live by. Students text, they email, they don't need an appointment to come see my team. We're here. We're here to service them and serve them. And we do a lot of surveying. We do a lot of conversation because at the end of the day, they are customers of ours. And I want to make sure that we are delivering on everything that we promise. And we're also able to adapt enough to change and amend things based on students' needs and based on where the industry is going. So we do spend a lot of time in those early years meeting with students, talking to them about what do you want to do? Making sure that what they want to do is aligned with the offerings we have, and then talking to the industry, like you folks, and saying, what are graduates lacking? What do you see as a void? And then going back and trying to address that. Because it's all about getting a job. And the first thing I tell students on the first day of freshman class 101 is your job right now is to get a job. So let's work every day toward that goal.
It's the No BS Marketing Show. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. That's Steve Tanzilli, the founder and the head of the Sports Arts and Entertainment program at Point Park University. He's told us about his background. And now, Steve, tell us a little bit about an example of bullshit in the workplace. When you, in the past, it could have been a vendor, it could have been an employee, it could have been a customer, it could have been a company. Just give an example in the past when you just had to say, that's BS.
I think in the, back in the sports marketing agency day, just to tell the truth. When you're dealing with athletes, when you're dealing with celebrities, they're not always on time. They're not always upfront about some of the issues, and just cut through it and just address it with the client to say, look, we have an issue. We have an issue and this needs to be resolved. And when I first started in the business, I was so concerned about pleasing not only my superiors, but also our clients. And I got into using a phrase, I'm working on it. And a client would say, so, where are we with player X? Oh, I'm working on it. Where are we? Oh, I'm working on it. And I generally was working on it, but I was disguising the fact that there were a lot of problems there. And I had, many years later, Ryan Clark, who was a client for a long time and is now doing a great job in ESPN, said to me, he goes, you know what, Steve? He said, and I'll never forget this. We were in a car driving somewhere, and he said, you know what makes you different than all the other, agents and marketing people out there? And I said, what's that? He goes, because I can trust you. And I said, wow, that's what makes me different? And he says, yeah. And he goes, I know you well enough that when you say I'm working on it, there's something that's not right. So always know to just address it right away. And I'll never forget that. And so it's not getting caught up just, hey, look, we got an issue. And working and holding yourself to the highest level of integrity, particularly in our world of sports and entertainment. I mean, the market is so small. I mean, I've been here, 10 minutes, and we all know the same people. And you wouldn't have me here at all if I didn't have a good reputation.
Yes.
And, you get that from working hard and being upfront and honest.
It's a no bullshit approach.
Mm-hmm.
And you said when they told you, when Ryan said he could trust you, you were like surprised. That's what we get. We get people will say to us, they'll say, I had a client yesterday say this to me. She goes, well, what happens if, she goes, I had a bad experience with this firm that came in. They were going to do a branding campaign for us, and they said, here's the fee to get started to the concept phase, and here's the fee to produce the actual concept. And she goes, they presented the concept, I didn't like it, and they billed me $5,000. She goes, how much do you charge if that happens? I said, I can't say because it's never happened. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm not saying that we'll do 3,000 concepts, but typically I think in the proposals that Mike Gaddy finalizes all the paperwork, I think we say up to 3 times just to kind of guard against someone being an ass. Mm-hmm. But can you imagine that, Suzanne, that someone would say, well, that's the concept, pay me.
Yeah, and I've always had an arrangement with my clients over the years, that always ask, well, how do I get out of the contract if it's not working between us? And I would tell them, if you don't think it's working, then I probably knew before you did that it wasn't working. And life is too short to work with under an arrangement that we know isn't working. And so I've always believed that if you're not happy, then I'm not happy, and let's just, move on. And it's all about trying to go that extra mile and being confident enough to know that, hey, you know what, you're not going to be able to win at everything, but as long as you do the best you can, then you got to be able to, be satisfied with that.
I can't imagine. So if there's someone out there that doesn't know what Mass Solutions does, we're a marketing firm and we work on marketing intel, finding out and defining your customers, and then coming up with the messaging and the tactics to reach and influence them. I can't imagine us saying, okay, we gave you one idea and you didn't like it, here's the bill. That's just insane. So it goes back to your point about the Ryan Clark trusting you. We get the same thing. We say, you guys we can trust you. I remember a CEO of a very large multi-billion-dollar company saying to me when I was VP there, you're the first marketing person who's ever saved money, because I manage the cost side. And that's the same thing about Mass Solutions. We manage the cost side for our clients. And that goes back to what Ryan Clark said about you. You can then trust us because we're actually managing the cost side.
Yeah, and another quick story about how you meet people and how when you lead your life the right way. I was booking a lot of shows in Philadelphia at the old Vet, and I was working with a agency out of Philly, and literally 48 hours before the show, and we're talking major acts, I would get, hey, you owe us $5,000, or we need to do this, and it's $2,000, the band won't go on. And it's just, so when I would build these budgets, my miscellaneous fund would always get bigger and bigger because I just knew they'd come with something. So when I was doing some, when 84 Lumber was able to secure the PGA golf event, we worked on it the second and third year, and part of our plan was to have it be a family-friendly event. And one of the things was we did concerts. And so I remember I booked a couple of these bands, and I had a new person that was booking, Gary Hinston, great guy, books, and Paula. And I'll never forget, at the end of the show, Gary comes to me and says, hey, I need to write you a check. Who does it get made out to? I said, well, check for what? He goes, well, it didn't cost as much as I thought, so I need to give you guys money back. I looked at him. I said, you realize you now have a client for life, right? Because I was so used to being taken advantage of, and the anxiety of, I don't think I'm going to probably make our number because they're going to ask me for something. And this gentleman is being upfront and honest. And we booked shows for years, and I always tell that story to my students about that. He could have charged me more, and I would have paid it because I didn't know any better. B, he could have just not charged any more, but kept it. But by him saying, hey, here's a check because it cost more, or I overestimated, was incredible. And he got the longevity of multiple deals and the loyalty, not only for us, but anyone, while I was involved in that side of the business, anyone who ever would ask, who should we book? Oh my God, not even a question. Got to go to Gary.
Great story. Ryan Clark,
Yeah.
Fast Willie Parker. Who else that our audience would know it's your biggest star?
Oh boy, James Harrison for a long time handled a lot of his marketing. For probably longest running, Willie and James and Ryan for sure. Those are kind of my core guys. And what was great is none of them were drafted. They were all undrafted free agents. They all had been cut. Willie didn't even play his senior day in college. And I had, how I got with Willie was I had just managed the 84 Lumber Golf event and the Bassmaster Classic that came to Pittsburgh.
I remember that. That was big.
It was
You
huge.
did a nice job on that. It was good exposure.
Two things that I just did not enjoy, fishing and golf, really set my career in motion. I'll never forget, I was driving up Green Tree Hill, and I got a call from a guy named Albert Avery.
I've heard that name.
Albert
Why do I
Avery
know that
was
name?
a 35-year employee at IBM.
Okay.
And he had Willie Parker as a client. And the only reason why he had Willie is because he promised Mrs. Parker that I'll take care of Willie. And so I got a call from Albert saying, hey, I got this guy, Willie Parker. We don't know what we're doing. He first game rushed for 200, I think it was 34 yards. And Albert said, I called the city of Pittsburgh and they gave me your name.
How beautiful.
And it was because I had worked hard on these events, and even though I didn't like fishing or golf, I worked hard and really strived to over-deliver, and that led to Willie, which then led to other guys in the locker room.
Steve, thanks for being on the show, but how can listeners contact you if they'd like to learn more about what you do? I'm sure we might get some parents and some students who want to sign up.
Email. You can email me at stanzilli@pointpark.edu, and I pride myself in the fact that I respond to emails immediately. So please feel free to email me, and I always enjoy the opportunity to speak with young folks and parents, and of course love for them to come to Point Park. But my bigger goal would be to just educate them on the importance of continuing their education and going out there and exploring to see what the world can offer them.
What I'd like to do is schedule for months out, have a sports marketing show that you're on with me, and then an entertainment marketing show that you're on. And we might even deviate from the regular format since you've already been a guest for the No BS part. But we can have you, and you can even bring someone else from Point Park.
That'd be great. I'd enjoy that. Thank you.
Thank you for being on the show. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us for the No Bullshit Marketing Show. Visit boldsolutionsnobs.com for show notes plus additional marketing and messaging resources. Sign up for light reading. You'll receive valuable strategies every other week to improve your marketing and transform your message. It's really light, intended to be read in 2 minutes or less, and it just might trigger bright ideas for you. To sign up, visit masssolutions.biz. Remember, ask yourself, what's the big idea? And build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions.